Welcome to the Compact Disasters podcast from compactdisasters.com, the show where we explore natural and human-made disasters from around the world. This is episode 51, the Granville Rail Disaster. On the morning of Tuesday, the 18th of January 1977, as the eastern horizon began to brighten over Sydney, a routine commuter service was transforming into Australia's deadliest rail disaster. The 6:09 a.m. train from the Blue Mountains bound for Sydney was packed with early morning passengers. Many were tradespeople, office workers, and families making their way into the city for another day. The train, made up of 8 carriages powered by an electric locomotive, traversed suburban lines that twisted and dipped in the approach to Granville, a western suburb of Sydney. As the train entered a gentle left-hand curve just west of Granville Station, disaster struck. The locomotive derailed, clipped structural supports for the road bridge overhead, the Bold Street Bridge, and, in doing so, triggered the collapse of the bridge onto 2 of the train's carriages. The crash was catastrophic. The impact crushed those carriages under the weight of steel, concrete, and momentum. The 3rd and 4th carriages bore the brunt of the falling bridge span, with hundreds of tons of bridge structure collapsing onto passengers. By the time the scene stilled, 83 people were confirmed dead, making it the worst rail disaster in Australian history. Decades later, in 2017, an 84th fatality was added to the official register, a yet unborn child whose mother was among the casualties. Meanwhile, over 210 people were injured, many seriously. The disaster left deep scars across the community, both physical and emotional. Detailing the precise moment of collapse reveals how a chain of structural failures aligned with human misfortune. The derailed locomotive first struck a power mast adjacent to the track, shearing it off. This initial collision contributed to the destabilization of adjacent structures. The first carriage was partially impacted, causing fatalities and injuries among its passengers. The second carriage escaped significant damage, but the 3rd and 4th carriages came to a halt directly beneath the bridge span that gave way. The Bold Street Bridge, estimated to weigh some 570 tons, collapsed within seconds. Its supports, designed to carry road traffic, were not engineered with a failure mode in mind. The bridge snapped, and concrete, steel, and some vehicles that were travelling on the bridge at the time of the impact rained down upon passengers below. The victims in those carriages had no chance. Many died instantly from crushing injuries. Others, buried under the mass, succumbed later. Rescue operations revealed horrific scenes. Bodies pinned in seats, limbs twisted, smoke rising from wreckage. Of the 8 carriages, the first 2 were primarily located on or immediately next to the track. The remaining 4 lay broken, some derailed but not crushed. The locomotive itself ended up tipped on its side among twisted rails and debris. Emergency responding forces faced a nightmare. The collapse site was a tangled mess of smashed carriages, concrete slabs, twisted steel, gas cylinders used to heat the train, broken glass, and injured survivors. Rescuers included police, fire brigade, ambulance officers, railway staff, local volunteers, and passers-by. One of the early dangers was crush syndrome. Victims who remained alive while trapped beneath heavy debris sometimes died soon after being freed, as blood flow restoration released toxins into the body. Some survivors, lucid while pinned, died mere moments after being moved. Leakage from liquid petroleum gas cylinders aboard the train posed an additional risk. Gases escaped into the wreck, making it dangerous to use cutting tools to access trapped passengers. Rescuers pumped water continuously over the wreckage to keep a barrier between gas and flames. Trapped passengers gasped for air, called out names, and some spoke with rescuers. But removing debris was perilous. parts of the bridge span continued to shift. At times, the rescue teams had to halt while a section settled or collapsed further. It took over 30 hours to recover all bodies. The last survivors were extracted well into the night, under floodlights, with the aid of cranes, hydraulic jacks, cutting gear, and sheer physical effort. Almost immediately, a government inquiry was launched. The formal investigation, led by Judge J. H. Staunton, called dozens of witnesses, reviewed hundreds of documents, and assessed both the structural and mechanical factors that contributed to the disaster. The bridge collapse was considered secondary. The immediate cause was the derailment and poor track condition. The investigators concluded that poor track maintenance and defective rail fastening were the primary causes. Rails had been insufficiently secured to sleepers, allowing them to move or spread under load. In curved track sections, this was a known risk. Over time, due to repeated use, the metal had worn and the bolts had loosened. On the curve approaching Granville, that defect allowed one side of the locomotive to slip off the rail, initiating runaway derailment. Other contributing factors included the wear on locomotive wheels, particularly one wheel that was noted as being in past replacement condition but was kept in service. The maintenance backlog and staffing pressure within the New South Wales rail system were also cited. Finally, the design of the bridge itself was questioned. The road deck had been raised over time by layers of concrete to align with street level, increasing the load on support piers. When the collapse occurred, the supports lacked redundancy. Significantly, the driver and crew were cleared of wrongdoing. The evidence did not support excessive speed or negligence in operation. The fault lay within the railway infrastructure and oversight. In the aftermath, the New South Wales government pledged sweeping improvements. Rail maintenance budgets were increased dramatically. Track inspections were regularised. Bridges of similar design were reinforced or rebuilt. The collapsed Bold Street Bridge was replaced with a new single-span design, eliminating piers over tracks so that a bridge collapse could not fall onto trains in future. Railway safety standards were overhauled. The accident forced rail authorities to adopt more rigorous standards for track fastening, quality control, wheel inspections, and structural assessments. Resource allocation to rail infrastructure was increased. On the 20th anniversary of the accident, a memorial garden was erected near the crash site. Family members gather annually to pay respects. Roses are thrown over the tracks to represent each of the deceased, and in recognition of the unborn child added to the list, that 84th name was formally included in 2017. The Granville Memorial Trust was founded to represent survivors and the families of victims, campaign for rail safety, and ensure that the memory of the disaster is not forgotten. The disaster also became a case study for mass casualty and disaster medicine. The Sydney Metropolitan Disaster Programme, operational for the first time, handled primary triage, evacuation, casualty flow, and hospital coordination. Medical teams faced unusual challenges: crush syndrome, gas inhalation, rapid deterioration after release, and treating burns and blunt trauma. The Granville crash spurred improvements in emergency planning, disaster drills, interagency cooperation, and medical protocols for rail-related trauma. Firefighters, paramedics, and hospitals in New South Wales adapted their training and equipment in response. For the communities around Granville, the disaster left a lasting imprint of grief. Families lost loved ones, and many were left with unanswered questions. Survivors and witnesses dealt with trauma, nightmares, and survivor's guilt. Memorial services, marches, and annual remembrance events help them keep the memory alive. The physical landscape also bears markers. A memorial plaque now stands at the bridge site. The railway corridor carries modern trains, but the space below the track is also dedicated, in part, to remembrance and reflection. The legacy encourages vigilance in railway maintenance and public awareness of infrastructure risk. The Granville Rail Disaster stands as a stark warning. Even routine commuter services can become lethal when infrastructure fails. The disaster teaches that safety must be continuous, not occasional, that maintenance is not optional, that oversight means more than inspection reports. Today, railway authorities worldwide are studying this tragedy. Engineers, safety regulators, and disaster planners point to Granville when teaching about rail stress fatigue, track fastening methods, redundant bridge design, and emergency response. The tragedy remains lodged in Australia's national memory as the worst rail disaster the country has ever known. The lives lost, the broken carriages, the collapsed bridge, they are not just scenes of horror, but enduring lessons. Infrastructure, if neglected, can become a killer. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Compact Disasters podcast from compactdisasters.com. If you did, why not leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts? And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you would like to support us more directly, please consider buying us a coffee. Head on over to compacthistories.com/disaster coffee to see how. Also, please check out our other Compact podcasts. You will find them all at compacthistories.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.